Hi, my name is Ken Gidge, and this is Gidge World. We haven't had many Gidge Worlds for a while because we've been doing lots of other stuff. But Gidge World really means that. What's taking place in my world? So when I find someone interesting, I must bring them over here to the station and also into Gidge World. Today, we've got somebody who's extremely interesting, a teacher, retired, who has written a book. She lives right here in Nashville. We'll learn lots about her, and I think you're going to find her extremely fascinating. Her name is Lee Guerette. How are you, Lee?
Hi, nice to see you, Mr.
Nice
Gidge.
to see you. Nice to see you. Now, we have a book, and I'm going to hold it up right there. As you can see, you've seen it. All right. And this is called Cognitive Yoga. But before we get into the book, let's learn a little bit about you. You're from Nashville, correct?
I'm from Nashville, that's right. I've lived here all my life so far.
So far, good.
So far.
And your parents?
My parents ran a very successful hairstyling place. My father was Isidore, and it was the largest and one of the most sophisticated, fashion-forward places.
Well, Lee is being probably a little shy about this. Her father was one of 100 hair stylists in the country to have a little tiny book that he was in, like Vidal Sassoon had one, and your father was in it. So when people used to come to Nashville, such as Lucille Ball, I think it was Betty Grable came to Nashville. So your father really was quite ahead of his time.
Yes, he was very progressive.
And your mother was the business lady of
the house.
The house and the store.
Right.
School. Where'd you go to school?
My primary school was Notre Dame Academy. High school was Mount St. Mary's, so we're Catholic all the way up. And then...
Did you have nuns?
Yes. They were strict.
Poor. All right, no, let's not talk about nuns.
Well, there are good things. There are good things, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we had nuns all the way up, lots of good discipline. And then I went to college at UNH. After that, I went to Franconia College and completed a BA, and then I went on to Boston University.
For?
A master's in
reading. Degree.
Master's in reading and language. Yeah.
Okay, I introduced you as a teacher retired, so where have you taught?
I've taught in and around this area for quite some time, over 25 years. My first teaching assignment was in Pelham, and then I was out of the business for a little while because I was raising a little boy. And then I went into Londonderry for a short time and then to Lowell.
To Lowell?
Lowell.
What about Lowell?
Lowell was hard. Lowell, the students, it was one of the poorest areas in Lowell, and the students were extremely tough. They were members of gangs, and they were defiant and disruptive and agitated and angry.
I think then Lowell was really tough and considered one of the worst places for teachers to teach, especially that school. Is that correct?
It is. It was a school that got on probation with the state of Massachusetts for a time.
Wow. Then where did you go?
From there, I went to the F.W. Parker Charter School, which is one of the finest schools in the country. It's a fabulous school.
So from hell to heaven?
Yes, from hell to heaven is the best way to describe it.
Now, why, I guess all schools like to think they're wonderful, especially a charter school. Why was yours so wonderful?
Well, it was a coalition of essential schools, and it followed the Theodore Sizer principles and habits of learning, and very child-centered, very child-friendly kind of school, and they managed to get the kids so involved, so interested in their own projects, in their own learning, that they wanted their own achievement. They were invested in their own learning.
Why? How did that work out?
Well,
I mean, we're going to have some teachers watching, because this book is basically written for teachers, but we'll have parents and other people. Now, why?
Why was it so good?
Why were the kids so involved?
Well, for one thing, it wasn't just rote memorization. It wasn't like the old-fashioned school where you had a lecture and then you you wrote your notes and you turned in a test. It wasn't like that at all. They had projects based on Gardner's theories of multiple intelligence. So kids acted, they drew, they sang, they danced, they danced numbers, they did interdisciplinary projects, and it was project-based learning across the board. They learned so much, and they were so happy, and they had so much fun. I can't say enough.
Now, this started from Harvard?
Theodore Sizer was originally a professor from Harvard. He went on to become the president of Brown, and he is a leader in education.
A great movement.
A great movement. He's passed away now, but his wife Nancy is still alive.
I have some knowledge of yourself before the show. We got to know each other. And from what I understand, a great deal of schools have gone to Parker to see how it's run.
Yes, we're considered a model school, and teachers from
around here or?
Across the country, across the world, actually, I suspect. Teachers come from around the world they make appointments to visit the classrooms and to see what we're doing. And there's a lot of what they call student as learner, teacher as coach. So the teacher is considered the coach to the student who is owning their own process.
Give me owning their own process. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. A young lady was studying, the topic was prejudice. And in Japan, there's a very small group of Japanese people who are considered lower than the rest of the Japanese population. And she chose to express her interest in this population by pretending that she was a little girl that lived in a butcher shop upstairs and she did a monologue of what this little girl was thinking, and that it was cold and chilly and so on and so forth. So she acted out her knowledge of that group and that situation. Instead of writing a paper, she portrayed it.
Oh, I see. Instead of instead of like writing a little booklet about it, she learned everything about it. Now, was she Japanese or Chinese?
No, she was totally American.
So she chose to do that.
She chose to do that, and that's part of the successful nature of the school is that there's a lot of choices. You invest your energy in choices that you've made, and that speaks to the heart. And I just want to connect that. This cognitive yoga is really about speaking to the heart, emotional learning. And cognitive means thinking, and yoga means unity. So it's a unity of thinking.
Well, so it's interesting. If a teacher was a teacher, they would correct a paper. Mm-hmm. A coach would help the student create their product. They
would give them resources. They would lead them to the best sources. They would watch them perform and say, okay, we need to adjust this a little bit.
So in other words, one person could not actually fake a book report. They would have to...
They'd have to actually do something, yeah.
That's fascinating. There's all sorts of other things. Now, I happen to know, we were talking, as I said before, that the school asked Bill Gates for $50,000 to help the school, and Bill Gates wrote them a check for $500,000, and which meant they could expand.
And they did.
So that's pretty good. I mean, when you get somebody like that who's $500,000. Well, now, why I wanted people to know that you were in Lowell, and now to, from the kind of the hardest of teaching to the most fun of teaching.
Right.
And is that how this book came about?
Well, because Parker was so cutting edge, liberal, advanced, I was allowed to use techniques based on mindfulness, which I've studied for years and years and years, in the classroom. And I could bring the exercises into the classroom, and they were accepted as part of the curriculum.
Okay, mindfulness is what?
Mindfulness is based on traditional Eastern philosophy. And it is the principle of it is awareness of what you're thinking and your mind-heart-body connection. So it's completely self-aware, and then using the information that you're getting from this awareness to make good decisions, to proceed well, to be successful, to live life.
That sounds complicated. How do you get the kids to
It's
calm down?
It's actually pretty simple. It's actually pretty simple. In fact, it's more simple than trying to multitask and do things like that. Getting the kids to calm down, we used to do something called the stop exercise. When they would come into the class, I'd say, all right, everybody sit up straight, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you want to. It's always an invitation. It's not supposed to be a demand, it's an invitation. Listen as far out as you can to the tiniest sound, the furthest sound. And what happens is when you are listening very intently, you can't be chattering in your mind because you have to.
You can't be talking on the cell phone.
You can't be talking on the.
You can't be texting. You can't be
tapping your pencil or anything else.
Right.
You have to listen.
So I like that, an invitation to be quiet. So to quiet down, and I guess that would quiet down lots of stuff.
It does. It quiets down the heart, and it quiets down the residual tension from the past activity.
Oh, okay. So like they come from the hallway, everyone's a little noisy.
Right.
And now they know when they're coming into your class, they're going to have a moment of
quiet. And they expect it. And some
they expect it.
They expect it, and some welcome it. You have to. The teacher has to keep their eyes open because kids will be kids, and Cheetos will fly. But if you train the kids to get used to rest, it's so nourishing that pretty soon they begin to like it, expect it, and want it. And it helps. It helps the rest of the class.
You know, I had two teachers. One was Workla, okay,
mm-hmm.
and one was Coburn.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this, they've been doing what you have been doing, but they were not invited to participate.
No, you had to.
They would look at you.
And I'm going to kill you if you don't do what I tell you.
Well, practically. And everybody got really quiet, and everybody got really, and believe me, these were people you didn't want to fool with. And we all knew that. But we're now coming into a different era with cell phones. We're coming in with all sorts of new technologies. So in a sense, this is sort of like going back to the old ways.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Not at all. Mr. Workler intimidated his kids. He was controlling you through fear.
No, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. I meant you're using a modern way of doing it to getting back to the quiet.
Yes, but it's not this imposition from outside. It's more of an internal control. You invite the kids to be successful, and you have to persuade them. You have to sell that this is a way to be more awake, more effective, more efficient, work faster, for example. And that's completely different. When you tell kids, I'm going to teach you how to get your work done twice as fast, and you'll absorb more learning in 10 minutes than you would a half an hour your old-fashioned way, it's a completely different possibility than just imposing silence or...
So it's first be quiet, and then guess what?
Pay attention.
We're not going to give you any sort of free time to fool around. We're going to get you moving immediately into projects.
Well, there is plenty of fun. It's not a question of not being active and participating, because project-based learning is participating, but it's participating with attention.
Attention and a different speed.
No, there can.
I think I have to. Excuse me. I think I'm going to have to read this book, because I'm sort of, and this is a book for teachers, and my IQ is about the size of the clock, I suppose.
It's 7.
That big. I know. this is, but having gone through the book and seen the book and have talked to you, this is extremely fascinating, and this is really, really cutting edge.
Yes, it's absolutely cutting edge. It's across the world. It's a subset of something called social emotional learning. And they're finding out that emotional intelligence is as important, if not more important, than IQ. That in order to be successful, in order to get along with people, in order to be a leader, one has to understand other people and be able to work with them.
So it's like you speak this to the kids. In other words, you're explaining this to the kids instead of having them learn it sort of on their own.
Well, yes, it's part of this is under having the kids check in on themselves and to monitor how certain situations are going to create tension, how their minds are working, what ideas they're having, and what the effect is on their body.
You're making them aware of themselves.
Absolutely aware of
So
themselves.
in other words, if one of the students are quiet, they're going to know they're quiet. If they're a little noisy, they might get a check that, hey, I'm a little above
yeah.
the noise
The
level.
kids, there's a great little tool in here called the noisometer. And some kids are more aware than other kids about the classroom, and some kids like to be quieter than other kids. So you tell the kids that you're going to try this little experiment. You say, okay, we're going to put a noisometer on the board. There it is. So what does a 10 sound like, that being the loudest? And you say, okay, everybody make noise to a 10 sound. And then you say, okay, so what does a 1 sound like? That's just about silent, right? So when we're in the classroom, we need to talk a little, but we don't need to talk a lot or loud. So what should the noise level be? 4. All right, so you put the kids in charge of this. And you say, okay, Susie, you go over and I want you to monitor the noise level today. And when you think it's getting too loud, just go up on the board and write the number that you think it is. And pretty soon, it's contagious. This kind of cooperation is contagious. And you'll start having kids, oh, I think we're getting too loud. Okay, all right, so, you go put the number on the board.
In other words, now, something we must explain to people, if you go to the internet in mindfulness, you'll find that there are, 7 seconds or 6 seconds. In this type of book, there's only 25 of them, books of this type. So this might be 26. So you're really, really ahead of the curve.
Well, there's a lot.
And you're from Nashua, too.
Yeah. It's ahead of the curve in terms of education. It has been part of the corporate world before. Of course, corporations tend to be a little more advanced than education, and then education follows.
You mean they would have Mr. John who went to Harvard standing at the board with a chalk saying, this is,
I don't know.
This is your level? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, adults tend to be pretty quiet, usually, anyway.
Not at my house. Yeah, that's for sure. This is quite an achievement. I've gone through it. It's extremely complex. I think this is a teacher's book, but I certainly would recommend this to everyone, especially probably parents, if they could get the book. Once again, I'm going to see if I can hold it up right here. Again, if they could get the book and probably even giving it to their teachers, because
well, parents have a great deal of influence over schools. And in fact, parents are the one who started the charter school movement because they were unhappy with the way education is going.
Now, something about your school, the parents had to do what at your school, at Parker?
At Parker. Well, it was started by a Dr. Laura Rogers. And she was the parents who decided, one of the parents.
She was one of the parents.
One of the parents. She decided that she just wanted a better place for her kid to go to school that was more creative, more inventive, more wise in terms of child-centered learning, how it's the neuroscience of learning. When you do things, when you learn from the heart, when you learn with your whole body and your emotions and everything together, that's real learning. It sticks. It stays with you. So she was one of the people who invited Ted Sizer in, and there were several other parents who constructed this school. And the original place for the school was in a bomb shelter.
A bomb shelter?
It was in a bomb shelter on Fort Devens. Yep.
Yeah,
Even an atomic bomb couldn't get rid of them.
Okay. No, this was at Fort Devens. Fort Devens has broken up and all sorts of businesses, and the school is there. Laura Rogers, by the way, have reading a little about her, is pretty smart in her own.
Yes, she's a professor at Tufts right now.
Yeah, right. She's a professor. So you got parents, but if I remember from some of the stuff you told me, parents had to participate.
Yeah, parents were involved in the school as volunteers, and they also had to come to orientation meetings and open house and different.
They had to be there.
They had to be there. They had to be there, or they weren't accepted in the lottery.
Oh, okay. Lottery. So in other words, there were so many kids?
Yes. They always had a 3-to-1 ratio of 3 people to each child who we could find a spot for.
So they had a lottery. You have to get into the lottery, and so the parents really knew that this was a pretty good place. So they had to get into the lottery, which meant they had to participate. There was no getting out of it.
No, there was no getting out of it. But these are enlightened parents. They're smart parents. They're invested in their child's education. They want the best for them, so they're willing to go that extra mile.
But I think the point of you saying the parents must participate. You don't have to be genius parents to watch your children.
To have the best, no.
To have the very, very best. And I think the parents is more of the parents going out there now and saying, hey, look, we want more out of you. And I think this is where something like your book would come in to help schools. Now, you left Parker, and you sort of got an underhanded comment recently. We won't tell the complete comment, but you got an underhanded comment that you were teaching this for the last 2 years or 3 years of your teacher career, and then you left. Now, you heard recently...
No, I was teaching it for the last 10 years of my career.
All right, okay. But up to the last 2, you got more so into it, correct?
Well, each year I added another exercise or 2, and I was always, one of the most flattering things someone said to me was, I was always thinking about a way to bring this technique into the classroom, to the children, and finding ways to adapt what could be, very long and tedious exercises for the kids, for the 12-year-olds. And Parker was the place that I could do that.
Well, this is factual, everything that you said, but something that you're not saying is that one of the teachers, I think it was Laura Rogers, who had contacted you recently and said that what you were teaching then, which they weren't so much, even though Parker was extremely, ahead of the game.
She said we'd still think you were a kook, other than the fact that this is becoming so popular.
Because now they're teaching it.
Yeah, and the science of it is irrefutable. It's extremely effective methods of teaching kids to concentrate and to focus their attention and to work better.
So in other words, we have Lee Guerette sitting beside us, who might be so far ahead of the curve to so many people that isn't that always the way when somebody comes up with something that you're a kook because it's so original?
Well, I'm not the only kook in the world. There are...
we know that. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm one.
Some of our favorite people are.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a mindfulness in education group, and that's worldwide. There's the 6 Seconds group, and that's worldwide. There are many, 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 many factions that are coming together. And one of the nicest things about these different disciplines is we're not competing with one another. We're enhancing each other's practice. And our goal overall for all of us is to teach the next generation how to love one another.
You know, I think that sounds all well and good, but and it's true. And
Did you hear me?
But yes, I did. Now, love one another. Hold on a second.
How to love.
To love how to love one another.
Yeah.
All right, but let's get something really straight, because you're not really being you might not want to pat yourself on the back. You're so far ahead of the curve with other teachers and where you were teaching, and Parker was an excellent school.
Right.
That they thought you were a kook because of how you were teaching your classes, and now they're beginning to teach the classes. So when I said earlier that this book right here, there's only 25, and this may be the 26th book, Lee, I've got to tell you, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is really good.
I know it's good.
There we go.
I know it's good. But it's not because I'm good. It's because the practice is good. And this isn't stuff I made up. This is coming from years and years and years of the instruction of very fine teachers to myself, about 2,000 or 3,000 years worth of Eastern philosophy and the wisdom of the ages.
But not put into philosophy. This is just really kind of things of being quiet and being still. And in the book, it explains all sorts of ways to teach the kids to pause and to quiet down.
To pause, and also to be awake and aware and grateful. Because it's part of the principle, the mandate, is to connect to one another, to be aware. And when we're isolated, we're selfish. We don't realize what someone else needs. And that's like poison.
Well, I want to tell you, we're grateful for having you, but we only got about a minute more. How can people get in touch with you?
It's leeguerette@gmail.com. If you Google Lee Guerette, I'll pop up in the, I'm all over the internet. My phone number and address are not secrets. It's in the book.
Number.
It's 603-888-2355.
And that's here in the
That's
city
here
of Nashville.
in Nashville. And it's in the book, too, as a resource. And I have a website called Cognitive Yoga.
Cognitive Yoga.
Yep.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much. We do appreciate it. And I hope this book sells well. And
Thank you.
I have a feeling that thank you for being the first show to come on. I'm sure you're going to do a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this has been Gidge World, and thanks. See you next time.